So Jay, so like people watching this are really going to want to know how you raised $50,000, and we've put a lot of thought into how best in a compact package that we could actually just get them the most raw information possible. So we just kind of thought maybe we'd start with the sequence that we took things with you and just kind of like roll through each one, and just from your perspective you could sort of be the teacher. So the first thing that we did is we kind of rolled through your network of connections. What's your perspective on how that initial conversation happened?
Well, on the website it was pretty clear. This was before we had actually connected, but it was clear to say, okay, how many people do you know in these different categories? And that immediately sparked a whole different type of thought than I had ever really had about crowdfunding. So I was like, okay, who do I know that's really close to me that I think would pledge, and who do I know that I haven't talked to in a while but maybe they would pledge, and then how many people on my email list, how many people on Twitter and Facebook, but how many people on Twitter and Facebook that actually post or retweet or follow up on things. So I was happy to know that my gauge of what I thought I could raise was pretty close to what you guys thought as well. And that was a very, very great place to start, to say, okay, here is a realistic number of something that I'm comfortable with, that I know we can do if we put our best foot forward and strategically approach this whole thing. And from the get-go, that gave me a lot more confidence. And that's definitely something that I tell people when people ask, oh, I'm about to do a Kickstarter, which happens a lot now. But it's like, what's the first thing I should do? And it's that. It's figure out your bottom line. Who are the people that you can go to right away and check out these guys' amazing website, and it'll help you calculate what you can comfortably shoot for without putting yourself in a place where you have to freak out the whole time. I think that the fact that the whole project was based on something where we felt comfortable and we were within a realistic place made it a lot easier to dream and push and keep pushing ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so two questions on that. When you refer to that comfortable starting point that you sort of thought you could raise and that we sort of verified with our calculations, what were those numbers? I remember what they are. If you want me to just say,
yeah, the ones that I know my mailing list wasn't any more than like 2,500 people at the most, right? So 2,000, 2,500.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook was probably like 3,500, something around there. And Twitter at that time, it probably couldn't have been any more than 1,500. And I would assume that initially, before I'd really dug in, I probably had like 350 people in my inner and intermediate circle. I don't really know.
Yeah,
that sounds accurate.
yeah. So I think in our initial talks, we sort of we thought you could be in that $10,000 to $15,000 range, and if that worked with your the minimum version of your project, then we could move forward and just shoot for the stars. But I think we'll get to that in a little bit. But I just wanted to establish kind of how our conversation began. The other part of this question is you referenced. You're like, I hadn't really thought of crowdfunding that way, so it was really good to kind of look at it from this different perspective. Can you remember back to what you did think about crowdfunding and what was changed about your preconceived notions?
Yeah. Well, if we look at the numbers that we just said, right, it's not that many people. It's not like I had a 20,000 person mailing list and 10,000 people to email. Like, we're talking about like 300 or 400 people to reach out to. And I think initially, because of that, the way I thought about it was that I need to come up with the most clever video that I could think of that's interesting and funny, and people will want to share it, and then all of a sudden there'll be hundreds of thousands of people that are watching my Kickstarter video. They're telling people, and now I'm like Amanda Palmer and raising all this money because of the viral spread of the project. Whereas once I started looking at your site and watching the videos, it became very clear that the real core of crowdfunding, especially now that we're in a place where a lot of people do it, is just about being transparent and being real and taking the time for yourself to figure out why you do what you do so other people will believe in it, and then maybe share it with one person or two people or three people or four people or five people. Because even if you have 75 people that you're going to reach out to, if each of them tell three more, you know, that's the way it grows. So I feel like what I learned primarily was that it's about the heart of the project and not about the bells and whistles.
Or the idea of, so you pretty quickly kind of put this kind of viral idea out of your head. Actually, through the project, you know, we didn't want to rule out any crazy left field ideas.
No, yeah, but we weren't going to rely on it.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that's a really cool little preface to digging in here, because I think most people come to the table with these preconceived ideas. That's not abnormal, and to their credit, there's not much information out there that would tell them otherwise. Let's back up, and actually, I don't know if we're going forward or backing up, but the the first work that we did was really digging in and trying to find out where Jay Stolar was coming from. You know, really a deeper version of who you are, and we call that, you know, solidifying your purpose worth backing. How did that process go? What did you take away from that, and how did it actually, what did it look like as we were doing it?
Okay. I'll answer that in two parts. The first is that this was the foundation and core of everything we did. And I feel like that part probably took the most amount, besides the video, like the most amount of like just time on my own, writing and figuring out why music means so much to me. Now, everyone's project's going to be different. For me, it was very much tied into my own emotional life and the way I live my life and my mission as an artist. So it really challenged me to say, okay, well, why do I wake up in the morning? Why do I make music? What is it that I want to do at all different levels of my career as an artist? Where do I want to be, not just financially or successfully? Where do I want to be as a person? Where do I want to be as the artist who's speaking to their fans, and what do they hear from what I'm saying? And that was really hard, and I know that we went back and forth a lot, and I had to do a lot of drafts until it kind of got to the point where I was really seeing who I actually was as an artist. And once we got to that point, and once it was clear that, okay, I'm here because I want to bring people together with music, and I want to make people happy with music. Simple, right? But it took weeks to get to that simple point. Then everything was built on that, and it was easy from that point on, because then all you had to do was build from a very, very strong core that has roots. And I think that that is the case for anyone. If someone's making some kind of obscure Brazilian jazz puppet show, and they sit there and they're like, I've loved puppets my whole life, and I love Brazilian jazz music, and this, I believe, can do this and change these people's lives, great, you know, that's going to be your thing. But that was a huge switch, and going back to the first question, as opposed to thinking like, I need this flashy video, I need this, I need that, it was more, this is why I do this. And once we got to that point, it was very, very powerful, I felt, for all of us, you know.
Would you say that it was something new that you learned about yourself, or would you say that it's something that's always been there, but you're so close to yourself, you know, day in and day out for decades and decades, and you sort of, I guess what I think is a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that it's obvious, like they internalize themselves so much, they think obviously everybody else will get it, when it turns out that maybe they don't even totally get it right now because they haven't thought about it in that discrete of terms for a while.
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. I don't think I had ever thought about it enough to the point of figuring out what it was explicitly. And this really stripped away all the crap and made me look right into the mirror of what I want to be, and really what I already was. And I've actually, I mean, even now, like we just had a couple of shows in the last few days, and a couple of them were in brand new markets, and I was playing. There were a lot of my fans, but there's also a lot of people there that I didn't know. And I noticed that some of what I do makes some people feel uncomfortable. Some people aren't looking to come to a concert and connect with people, and aren't looking to come to a concert and just be happy. Maybe they do, but at first, when they come and they see something that's like, oh wow, this guy's like really going for this thing. I think in the past I might have been a little insecure about that or afraid of it. Now I come into the situation and I know, no, this is who I am, you know, and this is what I want to do. And millions of people are going to love it, and some people aren't. But that's okay, you know, because it's what I want to do and it's what I want to be. And I feel like anything that's polar and strong, which if you are doing a project, you're going to figure out something that's specific and clear. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. And I think what the work we did has done is made me a lot more comfortable with just, this is who I am. Take it or leave it, you know. I don't know. That's a little vulnerable, but hey, it's me.
Well, that was kind of the theme of getting through this process, you know, because I remember being on the phone with you, and you know, you kind of went back to, you knew that you loved this connection element, and you liked brightening people's days, but to get to the source of that, you know, was kind of a breakthrough, and it felt really vulnerable because, you know, you could kind of see that a lot of that came from a lot of your darker times, and you know, kind of thought through the storyline of how, you know, you had to do a lot of tough things to kind of get to this place in your life where you can consistently, you know, be happy and not struggle as much. And I don't know, is that kind of also your recollection on?
Well, I definitely remember and still feel like it was a lot to talk about, to just be like, I want to connect people through music and make them happy. That sounds like, oh yeah, obviously that's what I want to do through music. But when you really make a point of saying that, no, this is what I want to do, it's a little scary. And I think for me, absolutely, like I've talked about it, I've had my struggles with depression, I still have it. And I think a big part of my mission as an artist is because I know what it's like to have to be like pulled out of something. So if my project could be something where I'm doing that for other people and then they're doing it for other people and this thing just continues to grow, then that feels very close to home and feels very real. And obviously not everybody who's watching this, you know, not everyone needs to have a super heavy emotional project. But I think the point of it is whatever resonates with you the most, you know, whatever is real for you will be real for other people. And in a world where you go to Kickstarter and there are thousands of projects now, I think you have to be real. Like I've said this to you a bunch of times. Like if you're going to ask for someone to go into their wallet, pull out their credit card, take the 5 minutes that it takes to go on there, watch your video, blah, 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 you need to give a little bit of yourself too, is kind of how I feel. And you guys helped inspire me to do that despite any trepidation.
Cool. Well, this is a very interesting topic, and we could talk for hours on it. But it sort of segues into something we've already covered a little bit, which is, you know, you've got this. You listed out your what we call the circle of influence, and you came up with individual names. And could you tell us how you did that specifically, and then we'll sort of tie that in. You know, at the end, we'll talk about how knowing your purpose made it easier to get in touch with somebody one-on-one. So we'll get to that at the end here. But you know, your mission was to make this list, and it was not that easy. They kind of flowed at first, but you, if I remember, you came back to it several times to come up with a list. How did that? Was it daunting at first?
Yeah,
was it easy?
Well, I'll start by saying it is daunting when you go to make that list. If I had, and you guys did tell me this, but I didn't really believe it, but maybe by Levi and Ian telling you and me, don't feel like you need to get them all down in that first day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Because the truth is that it'll just keep growing. It's like the kind of thing where once you have 200 or 300 people, all of a sudden you remember another 20 or 30 from this category or this category or this category. But that was a huge pain in the ass, but very, very valuable. So just sitting down and figuring out everyone you know from all the different things you've done in life. And it's kind of cool because it's like going back into the history of your life and seeing who, oh wow, I haven't talked to anyone from college or from high school or that side of my family, but at one point I did have a connection with them. So what was really helpful for me on a specific level is I just kind of mapped out the different major places in my life. So high school, family, college, music, Olympic gymnastics, which I don't know if a lot of you know about me, but I was an Olympic gymnast for a little bit. No, I'm joking.
Okay, well, because I watched an interview with you, and I forget her name, but I learned a couple of new things about you to the extent that I wouldn't really put it past you.
No, I wasn't an Olympic gymnast, but that was incredibly valuable. So just having that really the list of people that you know, so that there's something to work with. You're not just like pulling from the ether, you know?
Yeah. So we will come back to this at the end when it's time to launch and do your campaign. We're going to talk about how you actually got in touch with these people. I'm very curious on a couple fronts, and I'm sure the viewers are too. This next step is choosing your goal amount and determining your minimum project so that you can make a realistic goal amount. With you, this was a little bit different because you had your project was done. Your CD was done. I think you needed to do some artwork and a couple of things, but for the most part, you had recorded this deal. So this didn't take you much time, but a lot of people some people haven't recorded yet. Some people have recorded. And a lot of times they're curious, like, is it okay to do a Kickstarter if I've already made a record? What's your opinion on that? I think we can, see by the numbers here, but what's your take now that you've done it?
On whether or not it's okay to do a Kickstarter after your record's done?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just as valuable as doing a Kickstarter to record the record. Like if you make an incredible album and then you have no way to get it out into the world, which many, many people do, it's such a shame. So the way I look at it is if you can afford to do as much on your own in the creative side as possible, which you can, like you take your computer and get a microphone and find a quiet room and record a great sounding record in 2013. That's what I did and what we did, and spent as little as we possibly could on the album so that we could do as much as we can to get it out. And I think that is one of the most things, as long as you don't feel like you're compromising the creativity of the project, which in our case, I was lucky to be surrounded by a really talented team. But yeah, go for it. Get your music out. Get your dreams out. Don't just record it and then have your grandma and brother listening to it,
And obviously you sort of had that recorded, but you did do some thinking about what kind of money you needed to do the things you wanted to do. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were very specific on what the exact breakdown of the budget was for the promotion, marketing, radio promotion, both domestic and international, all of the videos that we wanted to make, any other team members that we wanted to pull in on the PR side. Like, definitely be specific. Be as specific about your promotional plan as you would be about, okay, I need $500 for the bass player. If you're going to break down people seem to be very specific about how to break down costs for a record. I need $1,500 for mixing and $2,000 for mastering and $750 for replication, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like I rarely see as specific of a budget for the release of an album from independent artists. And well, you guys pushed me for that too. We needed to be very, very specific about where every dollar was going, just so that if someone did want to know, they go and be like, "Oh, okay, cool."
Yeah, it's like there's an element. It's not. I can't imagine any individual person really caring as far as what the specific budgets are looking like, but I feel like they would look at that and think, this guy's serious. He's done all this work. He knows exactly where this money is going. And I feel like that's more of the selling point of having all the specifics listed out. Because we see artists do it a lot. It's never a make it or break it deal, but it's always a nice touch to just show people how serious you are and how prepared and how much thought has gone into it.
Yeah.
You know, just 1 second. I just want to point out real quick. How did you pick your goal, your official goal? Do you remember that process, and can you talk about it a little bit?
The $50,000 goal?
$15,000, yeah.
Because
that's a pretty important. 1.5, because that's a pretty important number, right? Especially if you're doing a Kickstarter, which is make it or break it. You need to use some care in that.
Yeah. That was pretty much the minimum of what we could do in order to have an effective release campaign. Like, if that was all that we raised, we still would have been able to have a solid 4-month PR period, a decent radio campaign, make a music video for the lead single, and still have some extra money budgeted just to, like, push out for the next tour. It basically gave us 6 months of a solid push. And I feel like that's at the minimum that you need to really put yourself in a position where hopefully at the end of that 6 months, your business is bringing in some more income so you're able to continue running the business. So that was really, well, you guys have a term for that, right? What's the term for the bottom line?
Yeah, that is our minimum viable project.
Minimum viable project.
Right. So the least you can do and still be happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was my minimum viable project number.
And that happened to intersect with some of our estimates of what we thought you could raise without too much risk as well.
Yes.
Which is good.
Numbers that I already had. So it was, when you guys essentially say that, like, a Kickstarter project isn't for everyone. So if your numbers don't line up like that, it might not be the right time. Maybe you want to take a little bit more time so that you're in a position that the amount you're able to raise and the project that you need to accomplish line up. Which is a hard truth that you guys make people ask themselves, but that's very important.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think let's move into rewards and how that came together. I feel great about your rewards. They were some of my favorite rewards I've ever seen. They looked like they, well, let me restate that. They had excellent margin. There was, probably about 12 of them, I'm guessing. And it was a nice stair step from low to high. There weren't any major gaps. How did you go about determining those rewards? What kind of work did you put in? What sort of revising did you do?
Well, I got to give a lot of that credit to my fans, because what we did is made a big list of all of the things that I thought they might want. And then talked with you guys, and we mapped them out, and then sent them out to the fans, and then they must have sent back like 50 new ideas. So we took their ideas and actually had comments on the page. I think before the project was actually released, we had at least 30 legitimate comments on the page of people saying, "Oh, I don't agree with this," or "I agree with this, this could be better," and we just polled what people wanted. And though that information was what helped us decide on the major packages, which was, just getting 2 CDs and sending them out to people, and then the $100 smorgasbord prize, where you're essentially just getting to pick two of four different things. You're getting to be in this songwriting club. It was just all of the things that people were very excited for. We felt, all right, let's give people an opportunity to really go for this if they wanna. If you really want to come and support, here's a way to do it, and for you to feel like you're really getting a lot for what you're giving. But also, if you want to just come to the page and give $1 or give $10 or 20, there's a lot of different opportunities for you to come and still feel like you're getting something, all the way up to the $5,000 level. That was really the whole thought process of what will really excite people, but is also something that I can accomplish and do effectively, And also, even from the first time I went to your site, you guys had mapped out the type of rewards and the idea of strategically building up the scale of rewards. So I think just listen to what Levi and Ian say, guys.
I don't remember, I don't know if you'll remember a ton of the specifics, but is there one or two examples of sort of your original ideas about rewards that ended up getting changed dramatically, or not necessarily flipped on their head, but just things that from where we started to where we finished, in hindsight, was kind of a big change? Was there anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. One was T-shirts, which I used to think were super, super important, but I found that like a signed CD or something that was personalized in a way where it felt like it had been let's use a signed CD as an example. People knowing that they could have a CD that I opened up and signed for them seemed to be way more exciting than just having a shirt that said even just a cool thing about the Kickstarter project on it. So that was interesting to me, that you didn't need to have a shirt or a poster, which was stuff that I always thought was super important. Once we started talking to people, it seemed that more human things were much more valuable to them. So a video sent from my iPhone, or me singing happy birthday, or me personalizing a ringtone for them. So it's like, I forget there's some of them, we have to finish them all up, but it'll be some funny stuff. But all of that kind of things that came from a one-on-one interaction, or being a part of the song club where you're getting a song every month, those were more valuable to people than just like an item of something that is one of a kind that they were getting. I know that it's different for everyone. If you're an artist and you draw, then your drawing is probably the equivalent of my video on an iPhone. But for me, I found it very interesting that everyone's like, oh yeah, I'd love to just have a phone call, or if you could send me a video, or if you can make me a ringtone, or if you can sign my CD, blah 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 blah. That was different than I had anticipated.
So that had getting feedback from fans had a completely separate function that we'll get to once we get to the launching and campaign part, which is very interesting, and I think you'll agree. You hit $23,000 in the first 3 days or 2.5 days, so, and I think that had a large part to do with it.
Yeah.
On to creating your video. So this is man, I just can't picture an artist who isn't interested in this topic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything. Just start talking and tell us stuff about this.
Okay. Well, I think you guys made it a lot easier. Here's what I would do, and I'm sure your advice is the same. But what I learned, one, if you do your purpose worth backing, this is what your video is going to be about, essentially. This is why you're backing me. And the most important thing is for people to just see who you are, what it is you're doing, and why you're doing it, though. Not like oh, here's my CD. It's just why am I watching your video? Why do you care about what I have to say? Since we had already done that work, it was in a place where now I just had to put that into a video form. At first, I was totally overwhelmed, but then you guys recommended something that made it a lot easier. So I just took my computer, sat in front of it, and spoke and mapped out all the things that I wanted to say. Did that, looked at it. It's going to be tough because there's some stuff there that you're just like, oh my God, this is horrible. But then you look at it and you say, oh, okay, this is horrible, but that's good, and this is good, and this is good, and this is good. So then we cut that up, put them in pieces, watched it again, and got more feedback and realized, okay, well, this is missing this, and this is missing this, and this is missing this. I think by the time we got to the third round, we had all of this very clear talking head material of here is the way the video is going to be mapped out, A, B, C, D, E. We know exactly what has to be said here. Now let's figure out what other kind of content would supplement that, like B-roll that I have, photos, video from concerts, video of fans, blah, 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 how to intersperse that. And now there was a very clear blueprint for a video, and it didn't cost anything either because I had just done it all in my bedroom, literally, or in my car. Once was in my car.
Yeah.
So I think,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, yeah, I was just going to say that process, which I think you guys have mapped out, and you have all my videos, which you guys get to see some very raw footage of me. That was literally life-changing because I thought I was going to have to spend thousands of dollars, find a really incredible video team, and map out this fancy thing where really at the end of the day, you just need to show people that you care about what it is that you're doing. And if you do that work and you believe in it, and then you map it out like this, you'll find something meaningful. But yeah, go for it, Levi.
No, that's very cool. I don't know that I could add much to that. That's perfect. Ian?
And you don't have to. You don't have to add a bunch. And that's kind of one of the major points that we try to make with any artist we talk to is just, please don't overcomplicate this, you know. Just be authentic, be yourself, know what you're trying to accomplish, and that's going to get you so much further than, you know, all the hootenanny shenanigans that you're trying to film with your pro filmmaker buddy who wants a couple $100 an hour. Like, that's making a big investment in the video doesn't provide a lot of return, and it provides a lot of anxiety and stress just over the whole deal. So
yeah, we get that question a lot. You know, how much should I budget on my Kickstarter video? The answer is zero. You shouldn't have to budget any money. Maybe you have no options and you need to hire a guy. If that's the case, doing what Jay did, you know, allows you. So your buddy ended up doing the final version. Well,
what he did was the editing, though. Like, I would say that if there's one area that you do, and I'm not talking about a lot, but like if you have a friend that you can pay a couple $100 to edit it, if you don't know how to edit video, then okay, that's reasonable. But like Ian just said, you don't need to spend a ton of money on a fancy production. Raise the money and spend that on something that you're going to see a result from.
I think I said hootenanny shenanigans.
He did say that. I don't think those words would come out very well, even though I am wearing
your Montana gear.
You guys remember what one of my first ideas was for a video? I don't even know if I ever told you this. But what we were going to do is I was going to have my friend of mine from college who does arrangements for a cappella groups. I was going to have her create a 2.5-minute fully a cappella version of all of the songs on my album as a medley together. So it'd be like 10 or 15 seconds of all the songs on the album. And I thought this was such a great idea, and I then read all your guys' stuff and did that first, like writing down the purpose, and then I thought of how horrific of an idea that was.
You did tell us about that. It was our first phone call, I believe, and I remember I paused. I was like, and then I think I said something like, "Well, that sounds like a lot of work."
I think it's a good idea for a video, but I don't know about for a Kickstarter video. And maybe that's an example. Yeah. It's not about hootenanny shenanigans.
Well, and what you just said is super key. there's lots of really good creative ideas that artists have that would be fun to do and interesting to fans and able to help gain new fans. But those aren't always appropriate for Kickstarter, which is sort of a completely different mechanism from what you're going to be doing after you release your album. And so it's always good to keep that in mind.
Agreed.
Yeah. Let's move to
the meat, the last fun part.
Yeah, which is kind of into, well, we could call it one section, but the first part of that one section is back to this whole idea. We call it preloading your people. What you did is you had X number of people, and you can tell us about this, but you got your project done, and then Kickstarter has a feature that allows you to send a link to people without it being live. So you just have them go check it out, leave comments and suggestions. So, and I want your version of this too, but the idea here is not just to improve your project based on people's feedback. The real valuable idea here is that it obligates them, it connects them to your project, makes them feel like they're a part of it, and that makes them much more likely to get on board immediately. Can you tell us how this worked for you and all that business?
Yeah. The way I looked at it was by telling people that I was already close to about the project 10 days. I think I started like 10 days ahead of time. It was a little bit of a respect thing too, being like, look, I'm doing this thing. It's really important for me. It's not an easy thing asking anyone for money, but that's why I'm sending you this early on. You can check it out. You can make up your own mind for it. If you don't want to donate and you can just give me some feedback that's for other people to help me with this project, then that would be amazing as well. But just wanted to let you know that this is what I was doing. And I thought about myself, like if Levi was doing a project and he said, hey Jay, I want you to check this out 10 days early and give me any feedback. Not only would I appreciate the fact that you took the time to send that to me, but then I know that I'm involved and I can send it to you, and probably I will end up pledging something to your project. And even if I don't, I've given something as well, and I'm connected about it, and maybe I'll talk about it. So I think that that was incredibly valuable, and I was pretty much able to get in touch with everyone in the 10 days before we launched. And specifically my fans. If you have fans that you interact with on Facebook or Twitter, and you can get in touch with them personally, like just take the time and send a message to them. And if you guys had a personal interaction or you know each other, like people know when it's really you sending those messages. No one sent out any of my messages but me. And it was really intense, but it's kind of the only way to do it with a project like this. It has to come from you. Preloading, it was essential to the project.
So, and it connects directly to how we handled the first day of your project being live, which we call that the pre-launch. So it's a 24-hour period where you're going to connect with those people who gave you feedback, and your tightest of tight people, and you're going to let them know what you're trying to do and that you want a lot of momentum out of the gate. And so because you had that connection, they had helped you, they had engaged with you, and then you're saying, hey, also, we're going to kind of do a secret launch here. It looked like a lot of people got on board with that, and then it helped. My dog is barking. It really helped the momentum out of the gate and the perception. Social proof is what we call that. And do you have any comments on that and how that all worked?
I would say that it was I didn't anticipate this, but it was kind of cool that people were like, well, I can't pledge yet. Why can't I pledge? I was like, well, no, it's not ready till Monday. And that was an exciting thing that you might think people would forget about it, but I actually think it had the opposite effect, where it was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then when they did find out about it, if they were at work, they probably talked about it to their friends, or at home talked about it to their girlfriend or their wife or their roommates. It's just the idea of you taking ownership enough of your project to say, this is important enough that I'm talking about it 10 days ahead of time. You know, I'm not just doing this last minute. I have respect for you as well. This is something that I've thought about. That's something that I think people really forget. They're like, oh, this all just happened. Yeah, it happened, but there were hundreds of hours of development before. And I think that's what the preloading does, is it shows people, wow, this person has enough respect for themselves and for me that they're really taking the time to plan this out. They're not just like asking me for money. This is meticulously organized, which I think anyone wants to know if they're donating to something. They want to know, how is this actually going to work? Am I going to have a response and an effect here? I think that does help with that.
Yeah, so getting into launching the project and then, you know, doing the campaign for 30 days, do you have any, how did this go? I'm just going to ask a general question. How did this go? And you know, what are the highlights and things you would tell people about to watch out for? Or
how did this go? It was awesome.
Somewhat of a mental,
awesome.
it was a roller coaster.
My life. What did you say?
It was a roller coaster, probably, to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah. But it was really awesome. I would say, okay, on a technical note, and you guys do say this, the first, like, 3 days before, the first 6 days, the 3 days before the campaign and the first 3 days, and then the last week, if you have like a 9-to-5 job, if you can try to take off from work or have half days, like, the fact, my life, I'm lucky that like this is essentially what I do. So I was able to move around songwriting sessions or stop any touring. This is just what I focused on. And I mean, I still did have a bunch of stuff, but it was sporadic, and I was able to make sure I took off that about like 10 to 12 days. That was essential because every second of your life should be about the Kickstarter project during that period, because you never know what will happen. Like, for example, for us, we weren't expecting to hit, what was it that we hit? The second day, we were already past the goal, right? Yeah. So I think the second day we were past 15,000. Once it got to that point, which we were not expecting, we really needed to be prepared for the next step. So all of a sudden, it was like 5 or 6 hours of that day was taken up, like, okay, now we have an opportunity to really get where we want to go. How do we do this? How do we clearly explain that to everyone? And although we had already prepared for it a bit, that took up a lot of time. So it was very stressful, but also very rewarding. And I think the most important part was just there was a clear plan mapped out before of, okay, here's what we do for the first 3 days, here's what we do for the rest of the first week, and here's where all the emails go out, and here's where the second wave of reaching out to people happens, and making sure that there's new content. That was actually something that you recommended to me, because I like having things very organized, but you were like, you know what, with the content and with the, what are they, the updates, you were like, just have fun with it, you know? And that was kind of cool. It was like anytime I was inspired, and I still do this now, sending stuff out to people, it just felt like within the really intense organization of everything, I had a way to just directly connect to everyone who was already there and say, hey, this awesome thing happened today. You know, just want to let you guys know, here's a new video, here's a new song, here's how I feel about that, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I just got really excited about all that. I don't really know if that was clear enough. But map out time, organize the hell out of everything that you're doing, and just be prepared, because you have no idea what's going to happen. And you really, there's a guy you did a thing on your page about. He raised, I forget the amount. It was like 5,000 or 6,000, and then he didn't have any flex goals. But I remember reading about this guy, and he said that he posted once every morning and once every night. And that's essentially what I did, except for maybe on Saturday I'd like take a break. But you really need to be on it, you know. Calls, going out, talking about it.
Yeah, and what I remember and what I just heard you say is that you had a lot of the explicit steps, the things you were going to do every day mapped out, especially for those first 3 or 4 days after you launched your project, and especially for kind of the last week, you know, that was very intentional. It wasn't just hit launch. Oh, what should I do now? I should contact some people. There was a lot of thought and planning that went into that. Is that right?
Yeah. I would say there was a 2-week period of planning before the week before the launch. So essentially 3 weeks before the launch, we started mapping out exactly what would happen every single day up until the end of the launch. Now, of course, that changed, but at least there was a structure to play in. I always say my favorite quote, one of them is Sean Pedd said, "You got to build yourself a cage so you can run wild." And I look at that as like a song to me is a cage, and then when you perform it, you can kind of bring yourself to it because the structure and the form is already there. With the project, if you map out exactly what you're going to do throughout the campaign, then you're in a place where, you know, if you feel like, oh, I got to do this, you can take a break from that because you know you still already have everything mapped out. You're not just like running around like a chicken without its head. And I think that was really essential, and I highly recommend that. And if you notice everything we're talking about, we're not talking about anything that has any cost. It's just you saying, okay, I'm going to do 2 cover videos. I'll release one on the Tuesday of the first week, one on the Tuesday of the third week. I'm going to send out an email each week. I'm going to post on Facebook twice a day. I'm going to post on Twitter 4 times a day. I'm going to put up a blog once a week. I'm going to make sure that I go and do some kind of fun video on the street 3 times throughout it. Just like simple things, none of which cost anything, but do require you to bring yourself to it. And again, I think people see that. They're like, wow, this person hasn't slept in a month. Maybe I should donate to their Kickstarter. You know, like I really do feel like you owe it to people to like put your heart and soul into it so that there's a value there because people are just supporting your cause. And if you don't believe in your own cause and you don't have enough respect for it to put in that time, I don't know, maybe this me being a little extreme, but I do think it's important to just bring yourself to the table, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to quantify that, but it's we see it all the time, you know. And
everybody's different.
Yeah.
So Jay, you just spent a lot of time talking about the ways that you reached out via social media and things like that. Were there other aspects to how you got in touch with people in your inner and intermediate circle that you spent all that time listing out way back in the second step?
Yeah, I would actually say that all the social media stuff was just, those are easy things that I was able to remember being in the calendar. But the majority of every day I spent like 8 to like 12 hours a day calling people, emailing people, messaging people on Facebook. That's it. And I also went out a lot during the campaign. So like at least 2 or 3 days a week I'd go out to concerts. I'd try to just hang out with people and just not in any kind of weird way. It actually kind of worked out that way, but just in a way where it was like you're out in the world talking about it, because also everyone was seeing it on Facebook. So it was kind of a cool period of time to go out and be like, hey, I heard about that thing you're doing. Be like, yeah, it's awesome. Like if you have a minute to check it out, that would be great. Nothing pushy, but just putting yourself in every possible position for people to know about the project. But I would say if there was one singular thing that we could base the whole success on the project in terms of how we interacted with people, it was through personal connection. Like you can post on Facebook 100,000 times, but if you're not also reaching out to people and taking that time to call your old friend from high school or email your teacher from 2nd grade, it's not going to have the same effect. But if you do that and they see that, wow, I can't believe they're taking the time to reach out to me for this. And then they see it on Facebook, and then they read about you in the local newspaper if something happens like that, you know. That's when things really start to happen. And the truth is, we didn't really even have any press until after the Kickstarter. Like, it wasn't until after the project that we hired a PR person for real, and they were able to start getting articles. So really, everything happened from just personal interaction, and then all of the buzz that we were able to create in the tiny little circle of people that I have, primarily on Facebook.
Yeah, so I think this is a good time to. I think we've gotten the meat of this whole process down, and I think we should fire off a few random questions your way, and then maybe wrap it up.
Bring it on, random question time.
Yeah, so two things about what you just got done saying. The PR front, we actually spent a little bit of time on the phone with your PR person, and you know, from where Ian and I are coming from, we didn't expect any sort of PR efforts to really be overly effective, but we, you know, had the opportunity to get on the phone with your PR person and talk it through and see if from her perspective there might be anything that could be done. And could you kind of review what that conversation was like?
Nobody's gonna care. There's the review. And I had talked to a bunch of friends of mine who work at, I have a friend who works at the Daily News and one who works at the New York Observer, and they told me that essentially there have been so many Kickstarter projects that it's just not news anymore, you know, and it seems like the news is all about new things and innovative things that are happening that people want to read about, and you can't really rely on PR to push your Kickstarter. All the things we just described are tangible, real things that you can do. Call someone, you know, email someone, go out and tell someone on the street, make a video, blah, blah, blah. These are things you can do. Relying on a PR person, which I thought was going to be a huge part of what we do, you can't, because unfortunately no one really cares.
And they want to. The other thing that they mentioned, actually, I think this was from another PR firm, but you know, their whole process is based on having music in hand. So everything they do is like get the music out, then follow up for press and placements. And so that was kind of another reason why trying to, you know, make waves without having the music just kind of doesn't make much sense to their flow, their workflow. You know, what traditional PR is all about.
Yeah. I just think there's a lot of noise in the music industry, and fortunately and unfortunately, there's a lot of noise in crowdfunding now. So every day, I don't know what the number is, but I'd imagine there's at least hundreds, if not thousands, of projects that go out every single day. So there's just too much going on for you to rely on something like that. The people that do get press are the people that raise $1 million or $500,000.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, Amanda Palmer ruined it for all of us. Because if you can't do something cooler than what she did, then nobody's going to care.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and definitely watch that video, which I know you guys tell everyone to watch. She's incredible. Look, go raise $1 million and get someone to write about you. That should absolutely be everyone's goal. If you have a project that's that powerful, that can do something on that scale, absolutely. But we're just saying, don't rely on it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the money. Just don't rely on any of that stuff. Take a minute and figure out why you're doing it, and then reach out to all the people that already love you and trust in that. And I feel like it's amazing how simple that is, but it can do everything you need it to do. Obviously, there's all the other steps that we just talked about for an hour. But
yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that's a good place to have Ian ask a question.
Yeah, it is. You know, obviously, Jay, you're a hard worker, and that really contributes to having a successful project. There's no doubt. But some of the steps we took and some of the planning we did, I think really cut that down. And the thing I wanted to ask you about specifically was after your first week of your project being live, where you had raised like over $25,000, what did you do that like second week? I mean, where were you? Do you remember?
Was this a trick question?
No, it's not. You took a vacation. You launched your project, and then you went to Mexico. Isn't that what happened?
Was that the second week? Yeah, it was. Well, I had already had this vacation planned with my family. But yeah, I was away, and to be honest, that actually worked to my benefit because I was able to be away from everything, and then my whole focus was spending time with my family and then working on this, nonstop while I was there. But I guess the answer to that is like doing the work that we did. Can't hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Doing the work that we did was able to zone in so surgically on everything that I needed to do that I was even in a position where I could say, okay, I am going to go away with my family right now. I'm going to take this time, spend time with them, but I still know exactly what I need to do for like 6 to 8 hours a day to map this out. And I think if we hadn't have worked together and I hadn't have been able to really feel comfortable in the plan, I would have never been able to be in that position, because I think it was like Labor Day weekend. It was like, okay, time to do this thing. If I hadn't have known that, no, we know exactly what we're doing. I know what I'm doing when I'm coming back. I know how I'm moving forward, blah, blah, blah. It would have been a total mess. So, yes.
Yeah, so
my mom thanks you, too, for that.
Did you just look off to the side and wave at your mom as you said that?
No, it's like a GMC Traverse or something.
And we don't really advocate going on vacation during, you can if you want to and you feel good about it, but just Levi and I both found it pretty interesting. I remember we were texting each other like, I wonder how Jay's doing. Yeah, I haven't heard from him for a little while. And then you're like, hey guys, I'm in Mexico. We're like, holy moly, you just that is righteous. Because running a Kickstarter can feel like you're juggling a ton of balls in the air, but you were able to do it in an organized and reasonable enough manner that it allowed you some flexibility, which had to be a lot better than the alternative of not knowing what you're doing and feeling stressed out about everything all the time.
No, yeah, and to be honest, I would recommend it. It worked out really well for me because I had total uninterrupted time away from everything else. So I was able to, before the Kickstarter started, I put in a ton of work to get all of what I normally, my songwriting sessions and touring and everything all packed in. And then when you're away from your element, it also is a little more comfortable. I was able to call who I needed to call, email who I needed to email, really, really focus in on it and have a little more space to think about it as well. But I think that goes back to saying, look, not everybody can take time, but you do want to take as much time as you possibly can during that time period because this is a very time-consuming project,
So the theme of this topic has come up a bunch in this conversation a few times, talking about writing down and planning out and making your calendar and what you're going to be doing in that 30-day window. But what we haven't talked about is what it looks like when you don't do any of that. And I think if you haven't launched, you probably I think that's going to hit you by surprise if you don't plan it out. And I say this from experience because I did 2 of them without having a plan. It was kind of like general in my head. I kind of had some ideas, but nothing was, here's what I got to do this first 3 days. Here's what's going to happen in the middle 10 days that are slow. Here's what's going to happen, the last 4 days and all that stuff. And so what ends up happening, and the reason you were able to the reason this whole vacation thing was so awesome is because your brain, if things aren't planned out, just turns into this like mush of anxiety that comes from having nothing defined. And so you feel like every day you have to be doing something. So you end up doing a bunch of busy work that that doesn't actually add to your success. So I don't know. If, you have a lot of friends. Have you run into any projects where they didn't really plan things out, or do you have a take on that? Like what it might look like?
This was my second project too, because I was in a band called Julius C, and we did a project, and it was in 30 days we raised $5,000, and I remember we barely made it, and we made what we thought was a clever video, and we thought were quirky rewards, and didn't plan anything out, and just like scrambled the entire time and barely made it. So yeah, I know from experience personally that that sucked. That was not a fun experience. This, as stressful as it was at times, as challenging as it was, felt rewarding because we really did put in the time and effort to have a project with roots and a plan that was organized and that you were able to execute. It was simple.
Awesome. So to take us out, I told you before we got started, just following you on Facebook, it just looks like you are doing a lot of stuff. You're kicking a lot of ass. What is it like to have gone from zero and thinking that you could raise $10,000 to $15,000 to maybe $20,000 and ended up hitting $50,000, and now, it looks, I haven't talked to you about this specifically, but it looks like your touring came together, and I'm sure you're still building on that. I saw you doing a Purpose and Connection show at the Children's Hospital or something like that. Give us a snapshot of what this looks like to have your vision actually be realized.
It's pretty amazing. I've essentially been running the release of my album like a small record label, and my single Like You Do was number 144 yesterday on like the actual top 200 Billboard chart, which is
awesome song, by the way.
Thank you very much. Just something we could have never done. The music video for that song is in production. I just got the first remix of that song yesterday. We have a full traditional PR team working on it. We've gotten all kinds of reviews because of that. Now we have a digital PR, social media team working on the project to revamp everything. We essentially were able to hire all of the people that small labels hire, and even some of the big labels too, and put myself in a position where by the end of this year, by the time everyone pieces out on like December 23rd, we'll be able to say in the last 4 months we have done everything we possibly could with a real budget to push this forward. And I'm really confident that in the first couple months of 2014 we're going to see some huge things happen, whether it's on the licensing front or the touring front or just on radio in general. Who knows? But the way I always look at it with music is if you have a good plan and you have a good team, and then you are able to invest in some of the very, very important things, which is just content and press, radio, getting out there, actually putting your music in front of people and getting out on the road. If you're able to really do this, then something will happen if you're good and you have the heart and you have the faith. And yeah, it's been exciting. And the hospital show was really amazing. I played, there's a hospital for really sick kids in the city, and went and did that the other day. And there's a group I'm working with called To Write Love on Our Arms, which is just all about mental health awareness and just trying my best to continue to give back on all fronts there. But it's a pretty amazing feeling when someone calls and says, "Hey, we think we could do something great for your music," and for us to know, "Oh, we might be able to afford that. Let's look into it." It's a whole other thing. And I have a call after this. Hopefully, my first European tour will be in January, which would be amazing. So following through on the international side of things and just doing everything that we talked about for 4 months, and now those things are actually happening. And Levi and Ian, I got to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. Like, you guys could never have even remotely done this without you. And for all of you guys that are watching the video, just read the website, follow the plans, and you'll find your own way through it. But these dudes know what they're talking about.
Well, Jay, it was a real pleasure working with you, an honor, really, and a lot was gained on both ends. So we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys so much. It was amazing, and good luck to anyone who's watching this. Have fun, be honest, and work hard.
Amen. Ian's muted because he's got construction going on, but
that's why he's so quiet.
Very muted. There's hammers downstairs and
He's being punished.
hammers upstairs. Oh, it's all right.
So I guess we'll conclude, and we'll see you all soon.